Okay, well, one of the sea dogs, Sir Walter Raleigh, knighted by Elizabeth, basically said, hey, let's just expand into the new world. Maybe we can get gold and silver and jewels and whatever, like the Spanish do. So Elizabeth said, okay, and they picked, well, Sir Walter Raleigh picked Roanoke Island, which is off the eastern seaboard of the United States in the general vicinity of Virginia. Okay, well, problems. I'm going to cut to the chase with this. This is, by the way, this is all on Canvas, so if you want to review it. Not necessarily a really good start. 2 implantations of the colony, second group stuck in 1587. We have the birth of the first English baby born in North America, Virginia Dare. And I would love to be the governor, John White. Yeah, that's a job I want. Yeah, the colony is not doing really good. I'm going to jump on a ship and I'm going to go back to England. You guys just wait here. Sorry. I would do that. Anyway, the colony at Roanoke did not do especially well. Well, when John White and his ship from Roanoke going back to England to get supplies, now, something that we don't always understand today or have a concept of. Sailing from the Americas to Europe and vice versa was not a quick process. Depending on the time of the year, depending on the weather, could take anywhere from a couple of months to who knows how long. Well, just by luck, John White arrives in England as England is preparing for Philip's alleged invasion of England, the Spanish Armada in 1588. That's a whole different story, kind of. The English or the Spanish were going to conquer England and turn England to the one true religion, Catholicism. Catholicism, say that 3 times. Anyway, it doesn't work. So, by the time John White and some of his merry men return to Roanoke, there's a problem. There isn't anything. The dwellings of the colony, abandoned, plundered. The words Croatan carved on a pillar, and the Crow, C-R-O, carved on a tree. What happened to the people? Possibly they died of a disease. Maybe it was a hurricane, but there wasn't really the evidence for that. Maybe the Spanish. Now, do we really know? Well, the accepted idea or belief is that the native inhabitants of the colony of Roanoke, actually because of their dire situation, were defended by an Indian tribe called the Croatans and went to live with them. So, do we really know? Not really. Okay, anyway. Well, getting back to reality, kind of, sort of, maybe. We have the English, the Spanish, the French, and the Portuguese all vying for domination of the Western world. Okay, let me, I haven't talked to you about this, so let me entertain you. In Europe at this time, there is a new theory of economics called mercantilism. What's that? Okay, briefly. Let's use England as an example. The English come to the Americas, and they establish colonies. Okay? Now, these colonies are to provide England with raw materials. Raw materials, then the English will take and they will make into manufactured goods and they'll sell back to the colonies. That way, hey, England makes money. Now, of course, the colonies also are places where people from England are living, making whatever they're making. And this is something that is practiced by the English, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the French, whomever. Okay, this is the way it's supposed to work. Let's use, again, English. Let's say you are a small planter in a southern colony. So you are wanting to trade with England, so the English provide the ship, you provide whatever you've got to trade with England, the English puts it aboard their ship, they take it back to England. Okay, great. Let's say you're wanting to trade with France. Okay, the English pick it up from their ship, take it to England, by another ship they take it to France. Now, a couple minor problems. Every time the ship docks and is put on another ship, that cuts into your bottom line. That cuts into your profit. So the English, and of course this is something that the English are doing, the French are doing, the Spanish are doing, everybody, all of the European powers are doing. So it's just not limited to the English. But let's say, for example, you are a wealthy planter in a southern colony in the English colonies. Hey, you can buy your own ship. So you can trade with whomever you wish without dealing with England. So this is costing England money. Okay, well, the idea, mercantilism. Did it work? Yeah, kind of, sort of, maybe. Power struggle between the major powers for North America. Okay, this is mercantilism. And favorable balance of trade means the mother country is making more money than she is spending and get more colonies. Now, I do not know what the value of a peso was during this period of time in history. I suppose I could find out. But for example, just looking at this, if you were the English or the French and you were seeing how much money in gold and silver that the Spanish were taking from Mexico, Central America, the western bit of South America, and the Caribbean. Oh my gosh, how do I get into this gravy train? And of course, this is, and I don't know that I've covered this, but this is one of the reasons why under Elizabeth I, we have the sea dogs, the English people that are authorized by Elizabeth I to raid the Spanish merchant ships. And of course, the Queen. Okay. Of course, also the Dutch were involved. Oh, by the way, yeah, I know, we'll get into this in a little bit. This really weird map of Europe. Would you believe that at one point in time in history, the Spanish controlled part of the Netherlands? Well, Dutch were not only fighting Spanish, but They were also revolting. They also were one of the major, Holland, are you kidding me? One of the major economic driving forces of this period of time. They established what would become under the English New York, called under the Dutch New Amsterdam. They also had trading in Asia. Okay, now, sea dogs, gosh, for about 100 years, the Dutch and the English, especially under Elizabeth I, raiding Spanish treasure ships and colonies in the Americas. Okay. Ultimately, the Netherlands would get its independence in 1648. Don't worry about that. Again, if you were a foe of the Spanish, the way you made money was by raiding the Spanish treasure ships or their cities. Elizabeth? Now, have I talked about this? Okay. Well, key players. King Philip II of Spain wanted England to be a Catholic country. Have I talked to you about Henry VIII? Yes, no? Okay. Time out. Let's talk to you about Henry VIII. Yeah, he was a nice guy. Sort of, maybe. Okay, Henry VIII, a Tudor. Really unique person. When he came to power, he fell in love with his dead brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon. Now, Henry was a good Catholic. And so, what he needed to do to be able to marry his dead brother's widow, say that 4 times real fast, was that he needed to get the Pope, and I forget which Pope it was, makes no real difference, needed to get the Pope's authorization for Henry VIII to marry his brother's widow, Catherine of Aragon. Okay, the Pope, wanting to keep Henry happy, said, sure. So Henry marries Catherine of Aragon. Well, Catherine of Aragon is broken. She only has one girl under Henry, Mary. Oh, by the way, in case you don't know, it's the male that determines the gender, not the female, but that's something else. Well, then Henry goes back to the Pope and says, hey, I don't want to be married to Catherine of Aragon anymore. Oh, by the way, I found another girl, Anne Boleyn. Well, okay, anybody in here Catholic? That's good. No, I'm Protestant. Anyway, at this time in history, there was the belief in papal infallibility. The Pope doesn't make mistakes. So if the Pope were to void Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon, it would mean that he had made a mistake in the beginning, allowing Henry to marry his dead brother's widow. Well, whole backstory, I'm not going to tell you about it. Anyway, Henry gets married to Anne Boleyn, one of the ladies in waiting of Catherine of Aragon. And, oh, by the way, Henry at this point in time, yeah, I know that I'm getting into a lot of stuff that is immaterial, but basically Henry breaks with the church in Rome and establishes the Church of England, the Anglican Church. And initially, the Anglican Church is just like the Catholic Church, except Henry is the head of the church. So all the money that was going to Rome now goes into Henry's pocket. Sorry. Okay, well, Henry has has another daughter, Anne, this is Elizabeth. All right, well, Anne Boleyn dies. Okay, he's got 2 girls. Well, finally, Henry will have a son. His son will succeed him. And there are massive changes in the church. Now, unfortunately, Henry's son does not live terribly long. So we have a little problem. Line of succession. The line of succession goes back to Henry's first daughter, Mary. Mary hated Henry. So Mary goes in and going to change everything in England. It's going to go back to Catholicism, and the Pope in Rome is going to be head of the church, and yada, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And this guy, Philip II of Spain. Oh, by the way, if there is a country in Europe that is more Catholic than any other country, it's Spain. Well, Philip II says, oh, right, yeah. So he starts putting the move on Mary. Well, the rumor is, Mary is pregnant. Yeah, she has cancer. She dies. Philip II then puts the moves on Mary's half-sister, Elizabeth. Elizabeth doesn't want anything to do with Philip. Now, of Henry's children, Elizabeth is probably, and I'm stretching this a bit, more original. So, Mary, Queen of Scots, dead. Philip II decides to invade England, gets the dispensation from the Pope, builds a huge fleet of ships to invade England. Elizabeth, England, a Protestant country, and of course, Elizabeth is the driving force between the sea dogs, pirates, that are raiding the Spanish treasure ships. Okay, well, anyway. Problem. The Dutch are in rebellion against the Spanish. Elizabeth's playing a strong hand in helping the Spanish fight against, or helping the Dutch fight against the Spanish. Okay, well, Pope has given the dispensation that Philip II can basically invade England, and yeah, Sir Francis Drake and so on and so forth haven't been punished sufficiently. Okay, 130 ships that the Spanish have. Whole different story here. It looks like, you know, if you were sitting above this all, gosh, it looks like the Spanish are going to sail up the English Channel, and that's going to be the end of England. Well, the problem is that there are many changes in the structure of the Spanish Armada, and the Spanish Armada anchors at Calais to pick up an army, Spanish army, to invade England. Never happens. And English set upon the Spanish ships in Calais, fire ships. Now, at this time of the world, if you're in a wooden ship, one thing you don't like is fire. So, the Spanish, instead of retracing their steps, sail around the tip of Scotland. Conditions aboard the ships are poor. The running out of food, etc., etc., etc. Storms, and some of the Spanish ships are wrecked on the coast of Ireland. And there are English soldiers there to dispatch the crews, literally. Well, ultimately what happens is the Armada makes it back to Spain, but this is literally, at least for this point in time in history, the end of the Spanish control of the Americas. Okay, well, here is one of the unfortunate situations. We all have mindsets of what we believe is true. In the early days of the European colonization of the Americas, the natives are cannibals. They are barbaric. Well, not necessarily. The biggest issue, and unfortunately that exists today, is that we, and I'm using this in an umbrella statement, we do not make the effort to get to know people that are different than us. We make generalizations. Okay. Well, anyway, chocolate. One of the things that the natives made, the Aztecs made, was chocolate. And when the Spanish, of course, were involved in their exploration of the interior, they brought chocolate back to Europe. Native woman prepared, served chocolate, roasted the cocoa beans over a fire, pounded them into a paste. And of course, these originally, chocolate was a religious confection. Ooh, so when you eat a chocolate bar, it's a religious experience. Yeah. No. Okay. All right. 1590s, consistent trade across the Atlantic. 1620s, pounds were sent Spanish between 1650 1700. Venezuela, more than 7 million pounds of chocolate. Revolutionary. Okay, oh boy. This has changed so many times. When I started teaching here, in fact, when I was at school, this was the Columbian Exchange. Then, somewhere along my time here at MCC, it became the Great Biological Exchange. I think it's back now to the Columbian Exchange. What this is that this is the trading of European goods to the Americas and American goods coming to Europe. Now, that's the good news. The bad news, and I think I've kind of explained this a little bit, but let me reiterate it. In Europe, over the period of time that Europe existed, there was trade between Western Europe and Asia, overland route, Marco Polo, etc. There was also the exchange of, well, shall we say, diseases. When the Europeans came to the Americas, there was no immunity that any of the natives had to European diseases. So, the thing that really destroys the native populations in the Americas are European diseases. Diseases such as influenza, measles, smallpox, Of course, the native population